Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire.
Hey, Mike.
Maggie.
Was that
we said it
Jinx?
at the
We were like
same
right
time.
on top of each other.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Maggie.
That was a weird hello, but hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
This is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a while.
This is such a Maggie topic.
Is it?
Oh, definitely.
I love this hashtag. There's like a somewhat trending hashtag of we have food at home. And I say somewhat trending because really most like 99% of the people I follow on social media are in the frugality, personal finance, minimalism type space. And so they tend to skew towards, things in those topics. And there's a lot of people, like one of my favorites is Prescriptions and Paychecks, who we need to have on the show, by the way. She frequently posts like what she's eating with hashtag we have food at home. I frequently do it. Many people do it. And I think we're all doing it to collectively remind and encourage each other that we do have food at home and we don't need to go out to eat. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it is pretty, it's pretty literal. One of our early episodes, Mike, was number 24, back when we were just little podcast babies, 100 plus episodes later, we're still talking about food. But that episode was how to save money on groceries, which we got a lot of thoughts on. And it's a great episode. My one word summary of that episode is Aldi. The spirit of the discussion we want to have today is the idea that, look, yeah, you can save money on groceries, but a huge expense category for a lot of singles, couples, families is eating out. It can get really expensive. I mean, I think the combination of groceries and eating out is probably one of the like top 4 or 5 expense categories for most people. I'd say.
I think so.
And I think one of the things that I have realized through talking to a lot of people about like budgeting and expense tracking and even doing my own is most people do not realize how much they're spending in this category. And it usually is one of those things where it's like, yeah, you spend, $20 or $30 here, you go out for a nice dinner there. Next thing you know, you realize you're spending like $5,000 to $10,000 a year or even more for many people on eating out. And like with everything we say, if that is what is most important to you, if you can afford it, if that is in line with your financial goals, and that's, an intentional category where you want to splurge and focus, like, that's great. We're not knocking it. But for a lot of people, they're trying to pull back their expenses. And this is a huge way you can do it. And we'll get into it, but there's a ton of benefits to eating more at home. And just, there's a lot of benefits to it. Okay. Let's share. Sometimes I get so excited about a topic and then I'm like, it's actually quite simple. You should just eat at home more often.
Right.
So look, our goal is to like encourage everyone to eat at home more often because hashtag we have food at home. And so do you. Okay, Mike, now look, don't be intimidated. I was going to say by our numbers. Don't be intimidated by Mike's numbers. You have some of the like lowest spends in a lot of these categories of like anyone I know. But let's share how much we spent just to give you some comparison numbers, because I think it's always helpful to hear what other people spent. Mike, what did you spend in 2021 on groceries and then eating out?
I spent $7,001 on groceries last year and $2,963 on eating out.
Nice.
What about you?
I like that it's 7,001. I often think like, what was that final $1 spent on? I hope it was something good, like some M&Ms or Reese's. Okay, I spent, and by the way, Mike has a family of 4. I spent $7,135 on groceries and $3,810 eating out. I will provide a caveat because I like to be ethical here, or I like to be transparent, should I say, is we last year or the year before made a decision in our expense tracking to track all travel, like anything we spend on travel while we're traveling in the travel category. because it just got really confusing the way we were tracking stuff. And so we actually spent more than that eating out. If I had to guess, I'm just going to like throw another number on that of probably close to more than $5,000 if I include money that was spent eating out while traveling, because we do travel a good bit. So,
well, thank you for that transparency. I don't know why you do that.
I know. Well, when we're having discussions like this, it does feel less like clear. Like in a perfect world, I would cross categorize things. These are the sort of things I want to screw around with when I retire. It's so like nerdy, like who cares, like tomatoes, like where this exact money is going, like as long as we know what it costs us to live for a year, like that's kind of what I mostly care about. But I am often fascinated by like, well, what am I truly spending on food in a year, and but I don't know. We just made it like we're always debating like what category we stick something under. And I think at some point we were like, just when we're traveling, like, let's just call it travel. Because there's a lot of times that I wouldn't have chosen to eat out.
Yeah, we're going to get off track, but let me just provide you some thoughts here.
Yeah, go for it.
I think that it is important that you keep it in the primary category of what it is actually for. Otherwise, it gives you permission to do things that you otherwise wouldn't do. And whether you're in Hawaii at a house or at your house in Atlanta, you're still buying groceries, and that's like food that you need to like live. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You need to be buying food at all times. And so I think it is much more effective just to track it in the primary category.
Problem is like, here are the scenarios where I hear what you're saying and I'm listening. I'm just saying, when I get into the like when I'm actually traveling and then like we're going through receipts and trying to figure out, like, it's just not worth it to us. Like we're like, oh, that was like we were at the Whole Foods in Hawaii. I bought pre-prepared vegan sushi, and I'm like, that's what I would have bought at a restaurant. So then I'm like, well, what do you call? We call that groceries? Do we call that eat? I don't want to think about it. I'm on vacation. It's travel, and I bought something else that wasn't food. I bought a bunch of soap for the kids as a gift. I'm like, I don't feel like breaking down my receipt is my point. And so we're just not getting as granular. Now, again, when I retire, you might get your dream, Mike, and things will be properly categorized in our household, because I know it does not make you happy.
It doesn't. I don't approve.
You do not
Let's
sleep
move
at night.
on. We've spent enough time.
Okay, moving on. What you do approve of is eating more at home.
Oh, because yeah, definitely.
You guys are very, very disciplined.
The numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits of eating at home more often, because we're going to get into tips on how to eat more at home, which means spending less eating out. But I think it first really helps to talk about the benefits of it.
First bullet is that if you are buying food and preparing your own meals, it's going to be much healthier than if you're going out to a restaurant, especially if those restaurants are fast food type restaurants. Another one is, even though this sounds a little backwards, it often is faster and saves you money to eat at home. So much faster. Yeah. Like it's funny. People think that they're saving time. Like often you go out to eat because you're like backed up or stressed and you're like, I don't feel like making dinner tonight, whatever it is. But ultimately, from most of my personal experience, the process of figuring out what you're going to eat for somewhere else, placing an order, waiting for someone to bring it to you, or going to pick it up yourself, or going out to a physical restaurant. That's the thing that I'm often talking about. Like going out to a physical restaurant, like with my family, takes a long time. We got to drive somewhere. We're waiting. It's a lot of like downtime for like getting the food. And sometimes it's a nice experience, but I don't know if you've eaten at restaurants with kids a lot, but often it is not a nice experience. Yeah, it's not fun. And so often it is in the end, even though it doesn't always feel like it in the short term, it is faster and can save you time. And it also saves you money. And I think everybody can agree with this, because you are not paying for someone to prepare the food. You're not paying for someone to deliver the food to your table. You are not paying the overhead of the restaurant. You will save money if you are buying and making your own meals at home. And I'd say, sometimes it tastes better. It depends what your cooking situation is at home and who likes to cook and the kind of food you all prepare. I enjoy eating out, but there are a lot of times that in the end, like, I am happier when I eat at home. And if it doesn't taste better, you should talk to your partner and make sure that they improve their skills a little bit. Yeah. Or yourself, like, another thing kind of along the it tastes better piece is, I don't know about you, Mike, but I feel better afterwards. Like even when I'm craving something, like I'm obsessed with Yumby lately, and
it feels great while it's happening, but like afterwards, I'm like, I'm so full. I'm like painfully full. I ate too much. That's part of the healthier thing too, is like, I always feel like I eat less when I eat at home versus out. But I feel better physically and mentally when I eat at home. And I don't know if you notice that when you eat out, but
I do. And I think that has to do with the fact that like restaurants use a ton of butter and sugar and all of these things,
and the portions are bigger.
Yeah, when the portions are bigger. And when you're cooking at home, you don't think to over-index on those ingredients like restaurants do. So yeah, meals are typically, at least in my household, lighter. I end up feeling a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right.
I also feel like, I used to eat out a lot more than I have in the last couple of years. And I notice that I appreciate eating out much more. Like it's a little bit more of a special occasion when I eat out now. Mm-hmm. Than when I would do it like every day flippantly and not think about it. It was not like a special occasion. It was just like a grind I was in.
I totally agree with you. And that's why I get so excited when people provide food for me at work. It's like a running joke that I might get super excited when somebody provides lunch. And it's because I don't eat out very often and I get really excited about it. It tastes different than what I'm eating. It is a novelty to me.
Yeah. I think there's a free dinner tomorrow night at work, and it's actually more like heavy hors d'oeuvres, but that's dinner to me. I'm going to get my dinner out of it.
How late is it?
How late is it?
How late
like
is this dinner?
Yeah, it's like 5 to 8. It's not a
that's
dinner.
Way too late. No, I'm too lazy. It'll take too much time.
It's not a dinner.
I like it when it's like provided to me over the course of the day without me doing extra work for it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I need to be somewhere anyways. I'm just saying there's going to be food at it. And so I'm going to call that my dinner and I'm excited about it. Uh-huh. Because it's a little treat. Okay. Last benefit, and I'm sure there's others that many of you can think of, is in my family, at least when we eat at home, it keeps everybody in the family happy because it's hard. We got 3 kids. It's hard to pick one restaurant that everybody's happy to go to and that nobody's having like a breakdown at or getting bored or complaining about how long it takes for the food to come. And like, like I said earlier, I don't think it's super enjoyable to go out to a restaurant with kids. And it's hard. My kids all have like slightly different tastes. And like when we're at home, I'm like, cool, you want pasta? Like, great. And they're old enough now where I'm like, yeah, one of them's making themselves pasta and somebody else is having tacos with us. Right. And it's like, it's just nice to be able to kind of keep everybody happy and do it in an easier way.
All right, Maggie. So let's get into some tips about how to eat out less.
Okay.
All right. First one is going to be set a monthly budget for eating out, even if budgeting isn't your style or approach. And I actually have done this before, even though I don't really fundamentally agree with the budget concept. I did just set a limit for the number of times I would go out to lunch over the course of a month at work. And it was a good reminder to me that I should not be lazy about preparing a lunch, and setting that target really helped.
Yeah. We're not big budgeters in our family. We track our expenses, but this year we actually, in preparation for retirement, cinching our belts a little bit, we set a budget just for like, quote fun, whatever you want to call it. And it's actually helped because we have like more conscious discussions and we're like, hey, okay. Like we plan a little bit better in it. We save it as a treat and everything else. And it's some good delayed gratification to, try not to eat out for like a week or so and then, wait and do something. Mm-hmm. Okay. Another one is, you can also set a goal for how much less you want to spend. So let's say you've done some expense tracking and you realize you're spending $1,000. Hey, you know what? I just realized this is the opposite of just setting a budget, Mike. That's probably why you're looking at me. Because I was like, look, if in your mind, the idea of setting a budget sounds constraining, then just say, okay, we used to spend $1,000. I'd like to cut that in half. Now that's the same thing as setting a $500 budget, but whatever way it makes you feel better
instead of a budget.
Yeah, you pick it if that makes you feel better.
All right. Next item is going to be keep food and snacks on hand that you love and that make you happy, because the more well-stocked your fridge and pantry are, the less tempted you are going to be to eat out because you are getting the things that make you happiest in your home.
Yeah. I know for us, like when we have good stuff, like we have like soy chorizo from Trader Joe's that we love. And we've got some like, good tofu or fresh vegetables. Like I'm not tempted to eat out because I've got food on hand that makes me happy, which brings me to my next thing that has been really helpful for us, which is make a plan. And some people call this meal planning. And we don't do it super fancy or formal in any way. Usually it's not even written down. It's just kind of roughly in my head that I know we've got, X on hand for these 5 or 6 meals over the next week. But when I have a plan and I know like, hey, and I've kind of maybe even like talked to Greg for 2 seconds in the day. I'm like, hey, you want to do like tofu and rice for dinner tonight and that broccoli we have or something? Then I'm already planning on it throughout the day. I'm like mentally prepared for it. And I'm not tempted to have like 5 o'clock roll around and be like, oh, I'm starting to get hungry. Like I have no idea what to cook. Let's go out to eat tonight. Right. Cause to me, it's when I don't have a plan, which is when I'm all of a sudden hangry. And then I want to go out to eat and I make bad decisions.
And along those same lines, it's also helpful to have some easy meals in your back pocket in case your meal plan doesn't go exactly to plan. And these could be things like an easy salad, sandwiches. Ours is pasta with, red sauce, things that you always have ingredients for and don't take a lot of time.
Like Mike, we have a ramen, a vegan ramen that's sold by this company called Public Goods. And it's like kind of a little bit more of an expensive ramen, but we love it. And that's always like one of our kind of backup, like quote, emergency dinners when we need something and we don't necessarily have something like quote, fresh on hand. One of the things that we have too in our head is we always have like a short list of meals that we know everybody likes. So all my meals are easy, to be clear. I have a short list of meals that I know everyone in my family likes so that when I go grocery shopping, it's like really easy for me to think. There's like, it's not like I'm making something different every week. Like there's about 5 or 6 meals that we kind of rotate through. And sometimes we're switching a new thing. Sometimes I find a new recipe I like. But overall, it's about the same like list of stuff. And again, sometimes we switch it up. But I think knowing what everyone in your family likes and kind of always having those staples on hand really makes it easier to meal plan. And again, just kind of be ready to cook at home instead of being tempted to go out.
And the next piece of advice, like any challenge, it's helpful to get inspired. And so you can go find recipes for dishes that you want to try, for types of cooking that you've never done before. And there are a ton of easy and free ways to go do this on Pinterest and Google or YouTube. So find some inspiration and it will help you get over the hump of wanting to cook more at home.
Yeah, like I love scrolling Pinterest for good vegan recipes. It's one of my favorite board activities. Another thing that is, I think I mentioned this, I don't know what show I've mentioned this before on, but I love Pinterest also for like, I'll have some random ingredients left where I'm like, I've got like sweet potatoes and broccoli or tempeh or something. And it's like, they're both kind of going bad soon. I need to use them. It's like all I've got. And I'll literally like on Pinterest do like vegan sweet potatoes, tempeh. And then like tons of recipes will come up. Those are probably not the best 2 real examples. But you get the idea. And it'll give you great recipes and great ideas for the random ingredients that you have left over. And there's a really good website for that also that is something about like what's left in your fridge. I'll figure it out and put it in the show notes. But it helps you. You can put in random ingredients that you have in your fridge and it'll like pop out recipes for you. You can also do that on Google and it works quite well. Okay. Next tip is try to plan ahead for busy nights or periods that you have coming up. So if you know that you have, a couple nights coming up when things are going to be crazy and you're going to end up making a like last minute stress decision to eat out, know that you've got, again, those last minute emergency meals that we talked about, but also just like have stuff in the freezer that's ready to go. Have stuff where, I'll make like a big thing of butternut squash soup and I'll freeze half of it. And I'll know like I've got one up in my freezer right now and I'll know that I can pull that out tomorrow morning and eat it for dinner Tuesday night. And I think when you do have a little bit of extra time, use that time to do some prep for those busier times that you have. The point is just plan ahead.
And if you don't have a lot of time, ask for help. So if you are in a relationship and you are doing most of the cooking, if you start to get overwhelmed, ask for help and trade off the responsibilities. And you could also share with the cooking and cleaning. The point is you don't want to get one person overwhelmed if you are trying to make a change in your lifestyle. So make sure it is a shared effort.
Yeah, we get our kids involved too. So, I mean, my 13-year-old absolutely loves like prepping vegetables and fruit. And like, she will do it all day long. And so
my kids are no help.
Well, your kids are still a little young. Like they're, you don't want to like maybe leave them alone with a knife, but like our kids are all, I mean, they're between 10 and 13. Their knife skills are pretty good. They've had me, hovering over them for years being like, you're about to cut your finger off. And they're, properly trained / scared. And they really enjoy prepping now. And they're actually quite helpful to the point, like they can follow recipes. Like, so I've used them. I delegate a lot in terms of like prep for dinner now. And they're quite helpful and I love it. And we're doing something fun together as a family. So it's like,
that's
win,
great.
win, win. Okay. Another tip is particularly for those that are like physically going back to work, which still seems like a novelty, by the way, but there are lots of people do it. I used to pack my lunch every single day, unless I knew there was a work lunch, but I would always pack my lunch. Lunch on site, buying a lunch on site is incredibly expensive. Like forget eating out in the evenings and weekends. Like if you're eating out every day at lunch, that's a massive expense.
Yeah.
And again, back to all those benefits, it's not faster. It's not healthier. Like, there's so many nice things about packing your own lunch. And so one, just pack your lunch. Two, I would keep like pretty large amounts of like kind of what I call like emergency lunches, which were like cans of soup or boxes of soup. And I had like a bowl I could heat it up in. And then lots of snacks. So I had like, protein bars and protein shakes and stuff like that, where if, I forgot my lunch one day, or if I thought there was going to be a work lunch and it got canceled, which is always like a sad day where you like think there's going to be a good lunch. And then you're like, oh, they canceled that lunch meeting. And then I'm like, I'll just eat this protein bar. But it's nice because again, sometimes you just want food, right? You're tempted to go eat out when you're hungry and you have no options. And so you want to remove as many of those scenarios as possible.
And along the same lines of keeping snacks on hand at work, you should keep snacks and water in your car at all times, because if you are in the middle of a long drive or a long commute, the last thing you want to do is get hangry and then have the desire to stop by a fast food restaurant. You want to have something to hold you over until you can make a meal.
Yeah. And same thing when you're going on like outings and trips with your family, Mike. I mean, we will go to like the botanical gardens in Atlanta or the zoo or something, or even just a park. And I know there's going to be a ton of places we could eat out. My kids will see them and say like, oh, can we go do this? And sometimes we'll, get something for a treat. But most of the time I'm like, we pack snacks. So I'm like, they're hungry. And I'm like, and half the time they don't care. They just want food, right? They don't necessarily care where it comes from. And so it's food and drinks, because if you don't pack water, you're also going to end up like buying bottled water somewhere, which is very expensive and not great for the environment.
Yeah. Next item on the list is use your freezer. You can freeze almost anything. So
even milk. Did you know you could freeze milk?
I don't see why not. I'm not sure I've ever done it.
I used to get into this with my ex-mother-in-law, who by the way is a lovely woman. I'm just saying she used to freeze milk, and I was like in my early 20s, I was like, you cannot freeze milk. What are you talking about? And it like really grossed me out. You can do it. I've tested it. We did it for years.
Well, good to know. But you can freeze all kinds of stuff. There's very few things that can't freeze. And so consider, if you have extras, definitely freeze it. Don't throw it out. But if you have an opportunity to buy something in bulk and then freeze it, you should do so, because you're going to have it on hand in the future.
Yeah. And a like, what do you call the stand-up freezers? Like a chest freezer, I think is what they're called. Sorry. Not a stand-up freezer, like a chest freezer. They're like $100. So if one of the ways that you'll be better about eating at home is having more freezer space, and it can always be frustrating when you don't have a lot, spend $100 to invest in eating more at home and having, all that stuff pre-prepped and all that. So one thing that we've done, we kind of talked about, one of the benefits to eating out less is that it feels like more of a special occasion when you do it. On a related note, Greg and I have been trying to save eating out for more social occasions. So we're super selective and cautious of when just the two of us will go eat out, because I know there's going to be a day when my brother pops up and is like, hey, you want to go out to eat this weekend? And then I want to say yes. I don't want to be like, I usually will say yes anyways, because I'm not going to let my budget usually like limit a social situation, but I will try to plan ahead knowing that there will be social situations when I'm going to want to eat out. Like we'll do a girls hang out with my friends and we eat out. And I want to save it for that, because that's when it's a little bit harder for us to all get together and cook at home.
And along the same lines of social events, get creative on hosting social occasions at home versus at a restaurant.
You remember when Diana talked about this when we interviewed her recently?
And I think she would agree that a lot of times these are more fun at your home than out at a restaurant. You have no time constraints. People are going to be more comfortable most of the time, and the food's going to be good. Everybody can share in the responsibility of preparing and bringing food. These types of events can be very fun. Yeah,
you can bring your own alcohol. You'll save money on alcohol also. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Last tip is if there is some takeout that you just absolutely love and you want to eat all the time, whatever it is, like that'd be a fun challenge to like learn how to cook a meal similar to that at home, right? There's a ton of things where you can research. A lot of restaurants sometimes even will like publish a cookbook and have some of their, more popular dishes recipes available. And so it could be a fun challenge with, you and your partner or a friend to say, hey, let's actually try to like recreate this takeout meal at home. Actually, Greg made the best vegan burger the other night. And usually our burgers are like super simple, but we happened to have like lettuce and tomatoes and some other stuff from taco night. And it was like it felt like a burger from a restaurant because it had so many like things on it. It was really special. It was really nice.
You're so easy to please.
I'm very easy.
Had tomato on it, and it was the best.
I put some spicy mustard on it. It was delicious.
All right. So if you do decide to eat out, there are a few tips that you can keep in mind if you want to try to spend less money. The first is that you should find affordable places that you love and then only spend when you want to splurge.
Yeah, like when we eat out, our favorite place to go is Yumby, and it's like a $25 meal, right? It's not, and that's with inflation. It used to be under $20, right?
Per person?
No, total.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
But I'm just saying that as in a lot of people, when they go out, it involves alcohol. It turns into like a, 70 plus just for two people. And then you take a family of 5 out. It's like, it can easily be $100 just for a pretty basic meal at a restaurant. So yeah, find more, like, for example, when we will take our kids out, like they like Chipotle, like they have simple taste. I'm not taking them to like get something fancy when all they want is like a taco. Okay. The other thing I would say is, I don't literally mean eat a meal before you eat a meal, but like have a snack or something before you leave. If you're like frantically hungry and you're going to make like a bad decision ordering a ton of food, and, just be thoughtful before you go somewhere. It could be that you actually want to have a drink before you go so that you limit the alcohol that you buy somewhere else. Because alcohol can be one of the most expensive pieces of eating out.
It's the adult equivalent of pre-gaming. So have a few pieces of bread before you go to a restaurant so that you don't buy an appetizer and dessert.
It is, yeah. Bread and a beer. Yep, exactly. And then come home. To your point, I didn't even think about it, but yeah, consider that like perhaps you come home and have dessert,
Ooh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you don't have to eat the entire meal out. I feel like we're ruining people's fun. They're like, what's left? I can't do anything anymore.
And our last tip, going back to one of our earlier discussions in this episode about how to categorize expenses while traveling, food is going to be a big part of travel. It's part of the enjoyment, but it's also going to be a big part of the cost. So rent houses or hotels that have kitchens or kitchenettes. Find hotels that have breakfast included. Try to be as conscientious about your food consumption on trips as possible.
Mike, I think when you travel, is like you have all these great intentions at home, and then sometimes you travel and it like all flies out the window. And so I think it's an important point of just like be thoughtful when you plan for how you're going to travel, that you can still manage these budgets while you're traveling, and be thoughtful and intentional about, eating, quote, at home while you're traveling, which is more like just not eating out at tons of expensive restaurants and everything else. Or if that doesn't work for you, you could just do what I do and just move everything to your travel budget just to bring this full circle here.
Yeah. You could just cook the books so that it doesn't show up as a real expense.
Cook the books. Exactly. Good. That's a good pun too.
Yeah. I did not know pun intended. All right.
In that case, pun intended. Okay.
All right. Top 3 takeaways, Maggie. First key takeaway. There are many great benefits to eating more at home versus eating out.
Okay. Number 2, set a budget for eating out, or if you want to do like I was accidentally fell into, set a goal for how much you want to reduce your spend, which is just a backwards way to get yourself into a budget.
Number 3, eating out is fun and enjoyable, but try to approach it more as a treat than a convenience. So be intentional with when you eat out. Okay.
I hope this has inspired some more hashtags. We have food at home.
Mm-hmm.
And again, a final tip is like follow people on social media who are who are doing good and doing good and a good role model for how you want to eat at home more often, because it certainly like helps me to have positive influences around me. So
I love when we do our top 3 takeaways and you get so
I always have more.
inspired that you give like a 4th or 5th key
Number 4,
takeaway.
number 5.
Or you decide to like rehash something with like additional detail.
It's so hard to actually give top 3 takeaways. So many takeaways. Okay, final takeaway. Thank you for listening. If you've been challenged or inspired by what you've heard, please rate and review the show. You can always subscribe to make sure that you never miss an episode.
If you have any thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370 or hit us up on Instagram.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Maggie.
Okay, I'm hungry and I'm going to eat dinner at home. Are you eating dinner at home tonight?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm
Good for
go
you.
make it right now.
How terrible would you feel if you like hung up this podcast and then we're like, get in the car, kids. We're going to McDonald's.
That would be funny.
Bye.
Bye, Maggie.
Bye, Mike.